Brothers and sisters, stars of light, listen carefully to these words. They are not a simple message, nor rumors that pass like the wind. They are a warning that burns in the sky and that many have already begun to feel deep in their hearts. Because there is a marked date, a day appointed in the times of heaven, a day on which families must decide whether to remain under the protection of the Virgin or whether they will be exposed to the coming punishment. This date is not like any other. For many, it will be an ordinary day. Children in school, parents at work, the noise of the cities, the routine that seems to repeat itself over and over again. But for those who know how to read the signs, for those who have awakened to the mystery, this day will be an invisible boundary, a frontier between protection and vulnerability. And it is there, right there, that the secret that can save your family will be revealed. Stars, don't think I'm exaggerating. Haven't you felt that the world has become more fragile? Haven't you seen how what seemed secure collapses in an instant? Look at the water that becomes contaminated from one day to the next, the skies that announce unprecedented storms, the families that fall apart for no apparent reason. All of this isn't just news, it's warnings, echoes of something greater to come. And among those signs, the sky has marked one day. Brothers and sisters, many of you write to me in the comments with words that touch my soul. You say, I need to protect my children. I'm afraid for my husband, for my wife. What can I do to prevent my family from being attacked? I read those words and understand that this message is not mine, but rather the Virgin Mary's, who wishes to speak through this channel. Because there is no more sacred request than that of a father or mother crying out for their children. And it is precisely in that cry that heaven responds. September 7th, a date that will not be forgotten, will become a day of trial. It will not be the end of the world, but it will be a day when punishment will loom like a shadow, seeking open homes, distracted hearts, and sleeping families. And while some will fall into despair, others will be preserved under a secret so simple that many will not believe it. Stars, listen carefully. Do not wash your hands in indifference. Do not say, that day will be like any other, because it is precisely when we believe nothing will happen that the warning reaches us. The Virgin has shown that the darkness of that date will not fall randomly. It will be selective, like a fog that passes from house to house, seeking where to enter and where not to. And the secret, that secret I will not yet reveal, will be the seal that distinguishes the protected families from the vulnerable. Brothers and sisters, don't you remember the ancient story when, in times of trial, people had to seal their doors so that evil wouldn't enter? Today, history repeats itself, but not with blood on the doorposts, but with living faith in the heart. And although many don't want to believe it, the day will come. Heaven has already announced it. September 7th is not a rumor, it's a warning. I want you to write in the comments from now on, my family is under the mantle of Mary. You declare it, because your every word doesn't stay on a screen. It rises like an echo to heaven and becomes a wall around your house. Stars, those who mock will say, there have always been dates, things have always been said. But you, who are here until this moment, know that something different is happening. You know that your nights are no longer the same, that your heart beats with a restlessness you don't fully understand. That restlessness is not fear, it is a calling. It is the Virgin telling you, prepare yourself because soon I will reveal the secret that will save your loved ones. Brothers and sisters, I don't want you to leave without feeling the force of this warning. Protect your family. Don't let the days pass as if nothing had happened. Bless your table, pray before sleeping, light a candle with faith. Because when the day comes, those simple acts will be what make the difference. Stars, listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Because this is not something you will easily see with your eyes. It is not a fire that will fall from the sky or an earthquake that will shake the foundations of the earth. The danger of September 7th takes another form. It is invisible, silent, almost imperceptible. It sneaks in like the wind through the cracks, like water in a crevice, like the shadow that makes no sound but is always present. Brothers and sisters, on that day, families who are not prepared will feel a heaviness in the air. They won't be able to explain it in words, but they will experience it in their homes. It will be as if the atmosphere has become colder, as if their hearts have suddenly become anxious. Some will speak of nerves, others of tiredness. But in reality, it will be a sign that the shadow is lurking, looking for a place to enter. Luceros, I want you to understand something important. Danger will not enter by force. It will not break down doors. It will not tear down walls. It will only enter where it finds a distracted house, a heart without prayer, a family that has not covered itself with faith. Because evil doesn't need violence when indifference opens the door. And on September 7th, that indifference will be the passport to punishment. Brothers and sisters, many will think, if I don't see anything strange, there's nothing to fear. But the invisible doesn't always announce itself with a loud bang. Wasn't it like this when the plague came in ancient times? People went about their normal lives until suddenly the disease was inside their homes. The same thing will happen on that day. As long as some continue with their routines without paying attention, danger will infiltrate their homes like smoke. Stars, this invisible danger takes many forms. In some places it will manifest itself as sudden illnesses, fevers that appear without explanation. In others, as family arguments that flare up out of nowhere, separating those who should be united. In others, as strange accidents, as unexplained losses. Evil doesn't always strike hard. Sometimes it whispers and destroys little by little. Brothers and sisters, this is why the Virgin insists so much on preparation. It's not enough to listen. It's not enough to know. We must act, because September 7th will be like a long night in the middle of the day. Outside, life will continue its course, but inside our homes the real battle will take place. The enemy doesn't seek cities, he seeks families. He doesn't want territories, he wants hearts. Stars, write in the comments, my house will not be touched. Because every declaration of yours raises an invisible wall around your home. And even if you don't see it, heaven sees it. Brothers and sisters, imagine with me this scene. A family without faith, confident that nothing will happen, sits down to dinner like any other night. Suddenly, a light darkness, almost like a weight in the air, begins to invade the atmosphere. No one comments on it, but everyone feels it. That house, without prayer, without protection, will be vulnerable. On the other hand, another family that perhaps lacks wealth, but who before going to sleep prayed a rosary together, lit a blessed candle, and asked for protection, will feel peace in the middle of the same night. That house will be invisible to punishment. Luceros, the invisible danger, doesn't distinguish between rich and poor, between educated and simple. The only thing it distinguishes is faith. And that will be the key. Those who trust in the Virgin and apply the secret will be safe. Those who ignore it will be exposed. Brothers and sisters, I want you to understand that this is not a punishment of hatred, but a warning. Heaven doesn't want to destroy, it wants to awaken. But to awaken, sometimes it's necessary for the invisible to make itself felt. And on that day, September 7th, the world will understand that indifference has a price. Stars, some will ask, how can we protect ourselves from something we can't see? And therein lies the mystery, because protection isn't visible either. No one will see Mary's mantle covering your home, but it will be there. No one will see the spiritual wall around your family, but it will be real. And what is invisible to the eyes is unbreakable by evil. Brothers and sisters, I want to leave you with this image. The enemy will pass from house to house like a wind seeking entry. And at every door, he will look for a crack. If he finds prayer, he will depart. If he finds indifference, he will enter. And the difference between the two will be the secret I will soon reveal to you. Stars, if in the previous section I spoke to you of the invisible danger that will lurk on September 7th, today I must tell you something even more important, the promise of the Virgin. Because where there is warning, there is also hope. Where there is shadow, there is also light. Heaven never reveals a punishment without also showing the way out, and that way out is always marked by Mary's maternal love. Brothers and sisters, many of you have written to me, how do I know my family will be safe? How can I protect my children when I don't know what form the danger will take? And I want to tell you that these are also the questions Our Lady hears every day, because she, as a mother, cannot bear to see her children afraid. Therefore, before the punishment is manifested, Mary has already made her promise clear. No family that takes refuge under her mantle will be touched by evil. Stars, this promise is not new. In past apparitions, the Virgin has repeated the same thing with different words. Where there is prayer, there I will be. Where my name is invoked, there I will cover. Where there is a lit rosary, the enemy will not pass. September 7th will be no exception. On that day, even if the shadow seeks to enter homes, the Virgin herself will be the wall that will stop its advance. Brothers and sisters, imagine this scene, an entire street lined up side by side with houses. The shadow passes like a cold wind, testing door by door. It enters some easily because it encounters indifference, mockery, and neglect. But when it reaches the house where the family gathered in prayer, where a candle burns in honor of the Virgin, where it was said with faith, "This house is under your mantle," it stops there. It cannot pass there. That is the power of the promise. Evil recognizes the seal of Mary and retreats. Luceros, write in the comments, "My family is sealed by the Virgin," because each of your words is like a stone placed in the foundation of your home, invisible to you, but visible to heaven. Brothers and sisters, some will say, how can a simple prayer stop what is coming? But remember, the invisible is not fought with visible force, but with faith. The Rosary prayed as a family is stronger than any stone wall. A blessed candle has more power than 1,000 armies. And a word of faith spoken from the heart is more powerful than the decrees of any government. That is the promise, that the small and simple, when done in the name of the Virgin, becomes an unshakable fortress. Stars, do not think that this protection is merely symbolic. Miracles have been seen in the past, homes that, amidst earthquakes, remained intact because there was prayer within. Families that, amidst illness, were preserved because they took refuge under the Rosary. This promise is not theoretical, it is living history that will be repeated on September 7th. Brothers and sisters, the Virgin Mary doesn't promise that the entire world will be spared punishment. She promises that every family that takes refuge under her mantle will not be touched. The difference will not lie in the country or the city, but in the decision of each home. That's why this message is so urgent, because the time to decide is now. Stars, the promise also includes peace, because it's not enough to be physically protected if your heart is filled with fear. The Virgin assures us that in homes where we trust in her, there will be serenity even amidst the noise outside. While some run desperately, you and your family will feel calm, and that peace will be a sign to others that there is a hidden secret that the world does not yet know. Brothers and sisters, think of your children, your parents, your husband or wife. Wouldn't you give everything to protect them? Heaven has already given you what you need: faith, prayer, and the promise of a mother who never fails. She doesn't ask you for riches or impossible sacrifices. She only asks that you open the door of your heart and allow her to cover your house with her mantle. Stars, many have asked, what if I forget? What if I don't know how to pray well? The Virgin answers, do not fear. It is not perfection that protects, it is the intention of the heart. Even a simple prayer said with love is enough to seal your home. Even a candle lit with sincere faith will be seen in the sky as a beacon saying, "Here I am, Mother, do not abandon me." Stars. We have already spoken of the invisible danger that will lurk on September 7th. I have already told you about the promise of the Virgin that she never abandons those who take refuge in her mantle. Now I must take you a step further, because there is a secret, a simple but profound act that will make the difference between a vulnerable home and a protected one. And although I will not reveal it completely yet, I will begin to give you the first clues. Brothers and sisters, listen carefully. The secret is not in expensive objects. It is not in complicated rituals. It is not in impossible formulas. The secret is in simplicity, in humility, in what anyone can do if they decide from the heart. That is why many will ignore it, because they will expect something extraordinary and will not know how to recognize the power hidden in simplicity. But those who do it, those who dare to obey, will see their houses sealed on that day. Stars, some of you write to me, should I move? Should I flee to another country? Should I stockpile food? And the answer is clear. None of that will help you if your home isn't marked with the secret that heaven has given you, because the enemy doesn't notice borders, isn't stopped by brick walls or technological alarms. He only retreats before a spiritual seal. And that seal is contained in the secret that you will soon learn. Brothers and sisters, I'll tell you something else. The secret involves your voice. It's not something that can be done in absolute silence. It requires you to declare with faith what your heart believes. Because words are weapons, and when an entire family loudly proclaims its refuge in the Virgin, heaven itself hears and the enemy flees. It's no coincidence that so many ancient testimonies repeat the same thing. The houses that proclaimed faith were preserved, while the silent houses were exposed. Stars. Imagine a September night. Outside, a shadow hovers. In one house, the silence of indifference reigns. In another, a father takes the hands of his wife and children, and together they utter a simple but powerful declaration. That difference, that act visible to the sky but invisible to the neighbors, will determine who sleeps in peace and who does not. Brothers and sisters, I also tell you, the secret involves light, a small light, weak to human eyes. But in the spiritual world, it is like a beacon shouting, "Here is faith, here you cannot enter." It's not about filling your house with lamps and meaningless candles, but about lighting a special sign in honor of the Virgin. And that sign, united with prayer, becomes an impenetrable wall. Lucerus, write in the comments, "I await your secret, Maria." Because by writing it, you are publicly declaring your willingness. You are saying, "My heart is attentive, my family is ready." And those words, although they may seem simple, are like keys that open the door to protection. Brothers and sisters, the secret also involves unity. It won't be enough for one person to pray alone, while the rest of the family mocks or remains indifferent. Power is multiplied when everyone unites, even for a moment. Even if some don't fully believe, it's enough for them to participate with an open heart for the seal to be complete. Because shared faith becomes a double wall, a reinforced shield. Stars, I want you to prepare for what comes in the next block. Because there, I will begin to show you what happens when families ignore this secret. I will tell you stories of homes that trusted in their routine and were exposed to punishment, and of others that, without fully understanding, obeyed and were preserved. I won't reveal it to you yet, but each story will be like a clue that will bring you closer to the climax. Stars, listen to these stories, which are not inventions or fantasies, but reflections of what heaven has shown time and again. September 7th will not be a uniform day. It will not be the same for everyone. Some homes will feel peace, others despair. Some will sleep under protection, others will be shaken by the shadow. And the difference will not be in wealth, nor in strength, nor in knowledge. It will be in secrecy, in obedience, in simple faith. In a city in the United States, a family gathered the night before. They weren't perfect, nor were they recognized saints. In fact, they hadn't prayed together for years. But that night, upon hearing the call, they decided to do something small. They gathered around the table, uttered words of faith, and lit a candle in honor of the Virgin. Outside, the shadow hovered like a cold wind. Neighbors later recounted feeling inexplicable fear, hearing strange noises, and the tension unbearable. But in that house, peace reigned. The children slept peacefully, the parents felt calm. The enemy passed them by because he recognized the seal. Brothers, in another nearby house, everything was different. There, the family scoffed at the message. They said, "Nothing will happen. It's just superstition." That night, an argument suddenly broke out between the parents. The children became anxious. One fell ill with a fever for no apparent reason. The next day, the family was divided, exhausted, broken. The invisible danger had entered, not with thunder or lightning, but with internal fractures, with darkness in the soul. Lugueros, Colombia, also experienced the contrast. In Antioquia, simple peasants raised their voices in prayer, even though they could barely read. Holding old rosaries, they declared, "This house is under the mantle of Mary." That night, as the nearby river turned dark and many homes trembled with fear, they felt peace. They testified that they heard a gentle murmur, like a breeze, saying, "Do not be afraid, I am here." And none of their children fell ill. None felt the weight of the shadow. Brothers, a few blocks away, another family, confident in their routine, did nothing. When darkness touched their walls, the atmosphere became unbearable. The screams multiplied, the lights failed without explanation, and at dawn they found their animals sick and their well completely bitter. That was the difference, not in the water, not in the land, but in the spiritual seal that some had and others didn't. In Luceros, Argentina, the stories were even clearer. On the Pampas, a group of gauchos decided to gather around a makeshift wooden cross. They lit a simple candle, prayed together, and proclaimed the name of the Virgin over their houses. That night, while strange apparitions of shadows spread throughout the region, they saw the starry sky brighter than ever. The candle's flame never went out, even though a strong wind blew. And they all felt something covering them, like an invisible cloak. Brothers, on the other hand, in Buenos Aires, a family who had heard the warning decided to ignore it. They laughed and said, "It's okay, it's just a scary story." That night, one of the children suffered an unexplained domestic accident. The tension in the house was unbearable. The next day, the mother confessed through tears, "Now I know we should have done what we were asked, but it was too late." Luceros write in the comments, "My house will be like those who obey." Because by declaring, you are already choosing which side of history you want to be on. Brothers and sisters, this contrast will be what will mark September 7th. It will not be a general chastisement that destroys indiscriminately. It will be selective. It will move from house to house, testing hearts, searching for cracks, and while some will cover themselves with secrecy, others will remain vulnerable. The difference will be so clear that even unbelievers will have to recognize it. Lucifer, think about this. What will you feel if your neighbors are at peace while your house is in chaos? What will happen if your children ask why everything is calm next door and not yours? That contrast will be the greatest test, because there will be no excuse, no logical explanation. Only faith will make the difference. Brothers and sisters, some will say, God cannot make distinctions. But remember, it is not God who separates. It is the heart of each family that decides where it wants to be. Our Lady offers the secret to everyone. Everyone can do it. The difference is in who obeys and who ignores. Stars, heaven wants you to understand this before revealing the secret. September 7th is not a game. It's not enough to wish for protection. You must act. And although I haven't yet fully revealed the secret to you, you already know it involves faith, word, light, and unity. With those clues, you can already sense it. But in the next block, I will say it clearly, because time is running out and we can no longer postpone it. Stars, we have reached the point you have been waiting for. I spoke to you of the invisible danger, of the Virgin's promise, of the announcement of the secret, and of the contrast between those who obey and those who ignore. Today, finally, I must reveal it. Not because I decided it, but because heaven has arranged for the warning to be made complete. September 7th is not just any date. It is a crossroads between shadow and light. And only those who apply this secret will be protected. The secret is simple but powerful. Listen carefully and engrave it in your heart. On the night of September 7th, your family should gather under one roof, light a blessed candle in honor of the Virgin Mary, pray the Rosary together, and declare aloud, "This house is under your mantle, Holy Mother. Evil does not enter here." Brothers and sisters, that's all there is to it. You don't need grand rituals. You don't need long journeys. You don't need to spend money. What you need is faith, unity, and a visible sign of light. The enemy cannot resist those three things: the prayer of the Rosary, the light of a blessed candle, and the public declaration of faith. That is the secret that will seal your house. Stars, you might be thinking, is it that simple? Yes, it is, because what protects is not complexity but obedience. Evil laughs at long speeches, but trembles when an entire family kneels and proclaims its faith. On September 7th, as long as the shadow roams from house to house, those who keep that light lit and that word spoken will be invisible to punishment. Brothers and sisters, imagine the scene. Night falls, the city sleeps. Darkness spreads like a veil. In some homes, all is silent and neglected. There, the enemy enters easily. But in yours, the candle burns brightly, voices are raised, the Rosary resounds like a spiritual wall. And then, when the shadow approaches, it sees the light and hears the declaration, "This house is under your mantle, Holy Mother. Evil does not enter here," and it retreats. That is the power of the secret, to turn your home into an impenetrable refuge. Luceros, write in the comments, "My house is under the mantle of Mary." Because it's not enough to hear it. It must be declared. It must be inscribed in heaven. Each of your comments is like an invisible brick in the spiritual wall surrounding your home. Brothers and sisters, this secret is not a human invention. It is backed by centuries of faith. From the earliest communities that survived in times of persecution to today's families who witness miracles after lighting a candle and praying in unity. It is the small that opens the door to the great. It is the simple that disarms the powerful. Luceros, many will ask, what if I can't get a blessed candle? What if I'm alone? The Virgin answers, do what you can with love. If you don't have a candle, lift up your prayer. If you are alone, pray with your heart. I will be there. The secret isn't magic, it's faith. What matters is your willingness, not the perfection of the details. Brothers and sisters, but listen carefully. Don't leave it until the last minute. Prepare now. Talk to your family, tell them what will happen. Plan where you will meet, make sure you have the Rosary on hand and the candle ready. Don't wait until the last minute, because the enemy takes advantage of carelessness. Preparation is also part of the secret. Stars, I want you to engrave this phrase: unity plus prayer plus light plus declaration, protection. That is the formula for the secret. And although it may seem simple, its power is incalculable. Just as a seal on the door stopped the plague in ancient times, this spiritual seal will stop the shadow on September 7th. Stars, now that the secret has been revealed, many are asking, does it really work? Can a candle, a rosary, and a declaration really make such a difference? And the answer is no longer just in prophetic words, but in living testimonies. Because entire families have experienced what happens when they simply obey what heaven asks. September 7th will not be the beginning. It will be the confirmation of something that has already begun to happen in many homes. In the United States, a mother in Texas tearfully recounted what had happened in her home. She said her husband was distant, her children constantly argued, and the atmosphere was unbearable. But that night, keeping a secret, they lit a blessed candle, held hands, and prayed the Rosary. At first, her children complained, laughed, and didn't want to do it. But halfway through the prayer, a profound silence filled the room. The father, who never spoke of faith, began to cry and asked his family for forgiveness. That night, they were not only protected from the invisible danger, they were healed from years of wounds. And since then, they repeat that act every night. Brothers and sisters in Colombia, a peasant in Antioquia recounted what had happened in his humble home. The nearby river was bitter, his crops had failed, and sadness filled his house. But upon hearing the secret, he gathered his wife and 3 children. They prayed with what little they knew, lit a candle, and declared, "This house is under your mantle, Holy Mother. Evil does not enter here." The next morning, they found that the well behind their house, which had been unusable, had regained clarity. They drank and felt no more bitterness. The peasant repeated over and over, "The water changed outside, but first it changed inside us." Because that night they were reconciled as a family, shared what they had, and peace returned to their table. Luceros, in Argentina, the testimony was even more impressive. A family from Buenos Aires, hit by the economic crisis and internal problems, decided to apply the secret even though they didn't fully believe it. They lit a candle, prayed as best they could, and uttered the declaration. That night, while the neighborhood suffered unexplained power outages and neighbors spoke of a strange, heavy feeling in the air, they felt peace. The candle remained lit for hours without burning completely. The next day, the father confessed that he had dreamed of the Virgin Mary covering his house with a bright blue mantle. From that day on, the family returned to praying every night, and even their neighbors began to join them. Brothers and sisters, write in the comments, "I will be a living testimony," because by declaring this, you are not only receiving protection, you are saying to heaven, "Make my house an example for others." Luceros, the most striking thing about these testimonies is not only the physical protection, but the internal transformations. Divided families found unity. Broken marriages found reconciliation. Estranged children returned home. Because secrecy is not just a wall against evil, it's a bridge to the restoration of love. And that is true victory, not only surviving the punishment, but emerging stronger, more united, closer to the Virgin and to God. Brothers and sisters, some of you wrote to me saying, "I didn't have faith, but I decided to do it for my children." And then you shared how, as you spoke the words out loud, you felt a warmth flow through the house, as if the air itself had changed. Others said that as they lit the candle, they heard a different, profound, almost sacred silence, and they all agreed on the same thing. After applying the secret, their homes were never the same again. Even lonely people bore witness. An elderly woman in New York, with no family nearby, lit her candle and prayed quietly. She declared with faith, "This house is under your mantle." That night, while the entire neighborhood outside commented on strange noises and inexplicable fear, she slept peacefully. And the next day, neighbors who had never spoken to her approached her to ask for prayer, because they had seen her window glow differently during the night. Brothers and sisters, what is happening is no coincidence. It is confirmation that the secret has power, because it is backed by the promise of the Virgin. And what has already begun to be seen in isolated testimonies will multiply on September 7th, when the shadow hovers and the houses marked with prayer remain firm. Luceros, I want you to engrave this in your heart. The secret not only protects, it transforms. It is not just a defense, it is rebirth. It is not just a wall, it is the seed of something new. And that is the greatest victory. That punishment, instead of destroying, becomes the beginning of a wave of faith that changes entire families. Luteros, what began in the intimacy of a home, could not remain locked within four walls, because the light that shines in a home soon illuminates neighbors, friends, and those who pass by on the street. The secret revealed and obeyed not only protects families, but transforms them into beacons. And those beacons, amidst the darkness of September 7th, become guides for the entire community. In the United States, families who practiced the secret began to notice it immediately. In Ohio, a mother recounted that her house, after prayer and a lit candle, became a gathering place for her neighbors. At first, some came just out of curiosity, wanting to see what they were doing, wanting to hear what they were praying. But soon, they joined wholeheartedly. What began as a small family gathering eventually grew into neighborhood vigils. This woman said, "I never thought my kitchen would become a temple, but now everyone gathers here." Our brothers and sisters in Texas, a farmer who had declared a secret about his house, witnessed something extraordinary. During a sudden storm, his neighbors ran for shelter, and while the wind whipped outside, peace reigned inside. That night, those who had never prayed knelt beside him, and the next day, the same people who had previously criticized him began holding meetings in their own homes. The secret multiplied, and the light spread from family to family. In Luceros, Colombia, the phenomenon was even more striking. In rural towns, families who obeyed became living examples. Neighbors noticed the difference. Where there was a rosary and a candle, there was calm. Where there wasn't, there was confusion. Soon, the streets of Medellin and Cali were filled with small prayer groups, each inspired by a family who had already practiced the secret. One witness said, "It was as if a spark jumped from one house to another until the entire neighborhood was alight." Brothers in Antioquia, peasants who had lived in isolation, began to share the secret with other villages. They walked for miles with bottles of blessed water and rosaries hanging from their necks, and wherever they arrived, they lit the first candle. Thus, entire villages began to transform into communities sealed under the mantle of the Virgin. In Luceros, Argentina, the expansion was even more passionate. In Buenos Aires, what began in a single apartment multiplied to an entire building. First one family, then two, then the entire complex, repeating the same prayer, turning on the same light, proclaiming the same declaration, "This house is under your mantle, Holy Mother. Evil does not enter here." Soon, word spread, and entire neighborhoods began repeating the same act every night. Brothers and sisters, on the Argentine Pampas, gauchos and peasants began to gather around communal fires. They were no longer just protecting their own homes. They were protecting the entire community. One gaucho recounted, "We realized that it wasn't enough to save our family. We had to save the entire village." And so, around these gatherings, faith communities grew, spreading beyond the borders of the provinces. Luceros, write in the comments, "My house will be a beacon of faith," because every public declaration not only seals your home, but also turns it into a light for others who still live in the darkness of indifference. Brothers and sisters, what was happening in these three nations caught the attention of even skeptics. The media, which had previously mocked it, had to admit that something unusual was happening. They couldn't deny that entire neighborhoods, after applying the secret, were more united, calmer, stronger. And although they tried to explain it as collective psychology, the people knew it was something more. It was the Virgin Mary responding to the faith of her children. Luceros, what was most impressive, was how children took center stage in this expansion. In New York, children who previously spent their days playing video games began leading prayers in their homes. In Medellin, elementary school children taught their classmates the declaration of the secret. In Cordoba, youth groups organized nightly vigils with guitars and Marian chants. The secret wasn't just for adults, it was renewing an entire generation. Brothers and sisters, this movement ignited hope in broken communities. Where there was crime, there began to be prayer. Where there was political division, there began to be unity and faith. Where there was hopelessness, trust began to blossom. Families stopped living in fear and began to be a source of courage for others. And the enemy, who had planned to sow chaos, found walls of prayer on every corner. Luceros, I want you to understand the magnitude of what is happening. We are not talking about a secret kept in a corner, but about a heavenly strategy to transform entire nations from humble homes. What began as protection became a mission. What was once a refuge became a banner. And now, the United States, Colombia, and Argentina burn with beacons of faith that inspire the entire world. Luceros, the light that began in humble homes, soon became too great to ignore. The United States, Colombia, and Argentina were no longer simple settings of isolated faith. They had become ignited territories where entire neighborhoods shone with the flame of families who applied the secret. And when faith becomes collective, when the people rise up without fear, the powers of the world tremble. At first, the reaction was disguised as indifference. In the United States, major media outlets began deliberately silencing the stories of protected families. Testimonies circulating on social media were deleted under the excuse of misleading content. Videos showing candlelight and community prayers disappeared within hours. The censorship became systematic, but the more they deleted it, the more the testimonies multiplied. The people no longer needed platforms. They used calls, letters, and in-person meetings. Faith found ways where censorship had placed walls. Brothers and sisters, in Colombia, the repression took a more direct form. Local authorities began banning street vigils, citing public safety. Police interrupted prayers, extinguished candles with their bare hands, and confiscated images and rosaries. The faithful resisted in silence, continuing to pray even without visible objects. A woman in Medellin tearfully recounted, "They took our candle, but they couldn't extinguish our faith." And that phrase became a symbol of an entire movement. In Luceros, Argentina, mockery became a political weapon. Influential voices ridiculed the secret on television programs, calling it medieval superstition. Influencers organized social media campaigns to discredit believing families, claiming they were living under false pretenses. However, each attempt at mockery produced the opposite effect. More people joined the secret, convinced that if so much effort was expended ridiculing it, it was because it held real power. Brothers and sisters, write in the comments, "Nothing will extinguish my faith," because your voice, written publicly, is stronger than any hidden attack. Luceros, the reaction of the world's powers was not limited to these three countries. Soon, international organizations began to speak of phenomena of collective manipulation. Experts in psychology and sociology appeared at conferences, trying to explain what was happening as social hysteria. But the explanations were insufficient. How could one explain that in thousands of homes where secrecy was practiced, peace reigned, while in others, the shadows loomed? How could one deny the obvious when entire neighborhoods bore witness in unity? Brothers and sisters, the reaction was felt even economically. Large companies began launching advertising campaigns promoting skepticism. Phrases like "trust science, not superstitions" appeared in mass advertisements. But those same campaigns failed because people saw that the ads couldn't bring them the peace they had found in prayer. The economics of those who sold fear collapsed in the face of the power of faith. In the wake of the outbreak, the persecution became more subtle but also more dangerous. In the United States, families who shared testimonies were fired from their jobs under false pretenses. In Colombia, community leaders who organized vigils received anonymous threats. In Argentina, young people who spread the secret were harassed in their schools and universities. The world's powers couldn't bear to let the light spread unchecked. Brothers, but what the powerful didn't understand was that each attack further strengthened the network of faith, because each persecuted family inspired 10 more. Each mockery provoked 10 new testimonies. Each censure generated 10 new ways of spreading the secret. It was like trying to put out a fire with the wind. The more they blew, the more it spread. Stars, this pattern has been repeated throughout history, time and again. The early Christians were persecuted, yet their faith multiplied. The martyrs gave their lives, and the gospel spread. Today, Our Lady repeats the same strategy. Where there is attack, their grace springs forth. Where there is persecution, their faith flourishes. Brothers and sisters, September 7th is approaching, and the powers of the world are desperate, because they know that date will not just be a dark night, but an opportunity for millions to discover the secret. That's why they will try everything: mockery, censorship, persecution, economic pressure. But heaven has already spoken, and what is coming they will not be able to stop. The powers of the world, they thought that with mockery, censorship and persecution, they could stifle the wave of faith that was rising in the homes. But what they didn't know was that when the voice of men tries to be silenced, heaven itself speaks louder. And so it was. In the United States, Colombia, and Argentina, signs so clear, so visible, began to occur that no one could deny them, not even the most skeptical. In the United States, the first sign appeared in the Texas sky. It was midnight. Hundreds of families were gathered praying the Rosary, their candles lit. Suddenly, a light crossed the sky like a bolt of lightning, but it wasn't an ordinary bolt. It took the form of an extended mantle covering the horizon. Witnesses claimed to have seen blue edges and stars shining in that light, as if the Virgin herself were extending her protection over the earth. Videos recorded showed the same thing from different cities, and although the media tried to explain it as an atmospheric phenomenon, millions knew it was the heavens confirming the secret. Brothers and sisters, something even more shocking happened in Colombia. In Medellin, during a procession interrupted by the police, just as the faithful were being dispersed, a gentle rain began to fall. But it wasn't ordinary rain. Those touched by those drops said they smelled like roses. The air was filled with fragrance, and those who had been persecuted minutes before fell to their knees in tears. Even some officers, upon perceiving the aroma, stopped their repression and joined in the prayer. Social media exploded with testimonies. Thousands declared they had felt that miraculous rain on their skin. Luceros in Argentina, the sign took the form of tears. In a small chapel in Córdoba, an image of the Virgin began to weep. But they weren't ordinary tears. They were crystalline drops that fell directly into a pitcher of bitter water. Witnesses recounted that after the tears touched the water, it became clear, and those who drank it felt immediate relief in their ailing bodies. The news spread quickly, and soon the chapel was filled with pilgrims. No one could deny what had happened, because the transformed water was taken to laboratories and no explanation could be found. Brothers and sisters, write in the comments, "I believe in your signs, Mary," because every word of faith joins the chorus of millions who are already seeing heaven move. Luceros, the most surprising thing was that these signs didn't occur in isolation. In the United States, while the sky revealed the mantle, a shower of roses fell in Colombia, and in Argentina, the Virgin shed purifying tears. It was as if heaven had wanted to say, "I am present in every nation that calls upon me." 3 countries, 3 different signs, one common message: the secret is real, the protection is true. Brothers and sisters, skeptics tried to silence even these demonstrations. They said they were optical illusions, coincidences, natural phenomena. But the people no longer needed explanations, because what their eyes saw What they felt on their skin, what they perceived in their hearts, was stronger than any speech. And so multitudes began to gather ever more strongly, convinced that September 7th would not be a day of fear, but of victory for those who obeyed. Stars, these signs also sparked unexpected conversions. In the United States, families who had never prayed began seeking rosaries. In Colombia, thousands returned to confession after years of absence. In Argentina, young people who had once mocked knelt in public squares saying, "We cannot deny what we have seen." Heaven was preparing hearts not only to endure, but to be reborn. Brothers and sisters, what happened in those nights was just a foretaste, because heaven doesn't limit itself to giving signs. Heaven prepares its people. And the signs were proof that the Virgin had taken the promise seriously. No family that obeys the secret will be reached. Luceros, after the signs that shook the heavens and the earth, nothing was ever the same again. What happened in the United States, Colombia, and Argentina didn't stay within their borders. It was like a spark that lit an unstoppable bonfire. Millions of hearts, previously cold and distant, began to beat with a new fire. Because the signs weren't just isolated miracles. They were direct calls from heaven, and the people responded with a massive conversion that the entire world couldn't ignore. In the United States, entire cities began to experience a spiritual awakening. In New York, crowds gathered every night in Central Park with rosaries in hand, regardless of the cold or fatigue. Young people who had previously lived in partying and excess now walked the streets offering holy water to strangers. Families who had never sat together to pray now made the rosary their most sacred moment of the day. The faith that seemed buried beneath the noise of consumerism and indifference resurfaced like a river breaking its levees. Brothers and sisters, in Colombia, the impact was even more vibrant. After the shower of roses in Medellin, thousands began to make a pilgrimage to the city from towns and villages. Endless processions wound through the streets, and Marian chants could be heard until dawn. In Cali, young gang members publicly handed over their weapons to join prayer groups. In Bogotá, the Plaza de Bolívar became a living altar, with thousands of families praying together every night. The conversion wasn't silent. It was a collective clamor, an entire nation kneeling in recognition that heaven had spoken. Luceros, in Argentina, rebirth took the form of popular passion. After the Virgin's tears in Córdoba, the entire country began to awaken. In Buenos Aires, the Plaza de Mayo was filled with pilgrims, arriving with lit candles from all corners. In Rosario, university students who had once mocked now organized mass vigils. In Mendoza and on the Pampas, peasants and gauchos united to erect makeshift crosses in their fields, proclaiming, "This land is under the mantle of Mary." The country, wounded by economic crises and divisions, found in faith a point of unity that no politics had achieved. Brothers and sisters, write in the comments, "My heart awakens with heaven," because by declaring it, you join millions who are already raising their voices in this wave of conversion. Luceros, the most surprising thing was how conversions began to cross borders. In Mexico, families began to imitate the secret after hearing the testimonies from Argentina. In Chile, entire communities organized vigils inspired by what they saw in Colombia. In Canada, packed parishes confessed that the awakening was born from watching videos of what happened in Texas and New York. Faith was spreading like a river of light that no border could stop. Brothers and sisters, the echoes reached even Europe. In Spain, thousands gathered in the Plaza del Sol to pray the Rosary at the same time as in America. In Italy, prayer groups began to grow around the tears of Our Lady of Córdoba, whose testimony had already reached Rome. What began as a secret revealed to protect families became a global spiritual awakening. Luceros, the testimonies were countless. Families that had lost their peace were regaining it. Marriages on the verge of separation were reconciled. Estranged children were returning home. Sick people were inexplicably regaining strength, and they all had one common denominator: the observance of secrecy and faith in the Virgin's promise. Brothers and sisters, even religious leaders who had initially been skeptical, had to acknowledge this. Bishops, pastors, and priests began to publicly join the vigils, confessing that they had never seen such a great awakening. In many churches, the doors could no longer be closed because the crowd overflowed the walls, and Marian chants could be heard in plazas, streets, and main avenues. Luceros, this wave of mass conversions, wasn't just transforming individual hearts, it was changing entire societies. Crime was decreasing in neighborhoods where prayer had taken root. Political disputes were losing steam in communities that now preferred to gather around the Virgin. And even the economy was beginning to feel a shift, because where once hopelessness reigned, there was now cooperation and trust. Luceros, the spiritual awakening that began in simple homes and spread to entire nations, soon became a challenge impossible to ignore. Millions of people united in prayer, transforming their families and communities, were now a force more powerful than any army. And when light grows like this, darkness reacts. Political, economic, and cultural powers began to feel they were losing control and decided to directly confront this wave of faith. In the United States, opposition took the form of laws and decrees. Local governments began limiting community gatherings under the pretext of health safety or public order. In some states, lighting candles in public spaces was banned, labeling the act a fire risk. Families who organized vigils in their homes with neighbors were even fined. However, the more they tried to quell the gatherings, the more they grew. Families began gathering in basements, garages, and hidden parks. What should have been extinguished went underground, like the catacombs in the early centuries of Christianity. Brothers and sisters, in Colombia the confrontation was more aggressive. Organized groups, disguised as activists, began infiltrating processions to cause unrest. They carried banners ridiculing the secrecy, chanted slogans against the Virgin, and tried to intimidate the faithful. But instead of dispersing, the faithful responded with more prayer, louder singing, and holding candles like torches. A woman in Cali recounted, "They surrounded us with insults, but when we began to pray, they themselves retreated as if something invisible was pushing them." Luceros, in Argentina, the struggle moved into the media and culture. Television programs launched massive campaigns against the movement, calling it dangerous fanaticism. Famous artists took it upon themselves to mock families who prayed, accusing them of holding back the country's progress. In Buenos Aires, an event was even organized to publicly ridicule the Rosary, presenting it as a symbol of backwardness. However, that same night, thousands of young people spontaneously gathered in Plaza de Mayo with lit rosaries, singing Marian hymns. The mockery became a catalyst for greater faith. Brothers and sisters, write in the comments, "Nothing will stop my faith," because every declaration of yours strengthens the spiritual wall against these attacks. Luceros, the darkest thing was seeing how economic powers also aligned against the movement. International companies began pressuring governments to stop the gatherings, claiming they interfered with productivity and disrupted the social order. Some banks even closed the accounts of community leaders who organized vigils, accusing them of financing suspicious activities. But what they didn't understand was that this spiritual army wasn't sustained by money, but by faith. And what depends on heaven cannot be stopped by the gold of earth. Brothers and sisters, the powers of the world could not bear that millions no longer lived in fear, because a people without fear cannot be manipulated. A people who trust in the Virgin Mary does not kneel before corrupt rulers or empty promises. And this inner freedom was what most disturbed those who had always controlled the masses. That is why they redoubled their attacks, trying to sow fear, distrust, and division. Lucaros, but what happened was the opposite. Each attack brought the people closer together. Families in the United States, Colombia, and Argentina began to connect with each other. What was once local became global. Rosaries recited in New York were followed simultaneously in Medellin and Buenos Aires. The persecution, instead of extinguishing the flame, lit a global bonfire. Brothers and sisters, what is at stake is not only the freedom to pray, but the very destiny of nations. September 7th will mark a before and after, and the powers of the world know it. That is why they are preparing for an even greater confrontation. But what they do not understand is that they are not fighting against a human movement, but against a work of heaven. Stars, brothers and sisters, we have walked this message together. We have seen the warning, the secret, and the promise. And now, I want you to close this moment with a prayer that is not just words, but a wall of protection over your home and your family. Virgin Mary, Mother who never abandons, today I place myself under your mantle. My family and I give you our lives. Cover us from all evil, from all darkness, from all punishment. May only light, peace, and unity dwell in my house. May no enemy cross the doors of my home. And may your blessing reach my children, my parents, my siblings, and all those I love. Holy Virgin, I declare to you publicly, this house is yours, this heart is yours, this family is yours. Amen. If you prayed with me, write in the comments, my house is under the mantle of Mary. That declaration will be your seal of faith. And now I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you to everyone who is subscribing to the channel, to those who like it with love, to those who activate the notification bell, and above all, to those who share this message. Because every time you share it, even in a small WhatsApp group, even with just one friend, a family member, a neighbor, you are bringing light to a home that may be in darkness. Stars, brothers, sisters, this community is growing like a spiritual army, intimate with the Virgin Mary, and I'm heartily glad to walk alongside you. Don't forget, every day we continue to bring messages from heaven. Share, subscribe, comment, activate the bell, because someone you love needs to hear this today.